Welcome back to our coaching network. This is our Meet the Coach convo here. Haven't done this in about 6 months, but we're back with an old teammate of mine, an old roommate of mine, Mr. Taylor Housewright, who's now currently the offensive coordinator at national championship runner-up Montana State. Tell you what's good.
Not much, man. That runner-up's got a little stink to it. I know that.
I know, right? Yeah. Not that we haven't just talked for 30 minutes on this, but now we're recording. It sounded like we just started talking. All right. So run us through your coaching career. So, and I'd lay the groundwork first that you were a player at Ashland University, stand out, got invited to Bengals camp, didn't quite make it. And then you weren't going to coach, right? Did you ever have plans to coach?
Yeah, I wanted to coach, but obviously thought about it as a young man getting away from it. Moved to Charlotte, North Carolina with some friends. Lived in a closet and managed a bar. And one Sunday, I got a phone call halfway through the 2013 season from Mike Bath at Miami of Ohio. He took over as interim head coach and brought me on, called me at 8 a.m. And I was in Oxford, Ohio that Sunday, about 6 weeks into the season at 10 p.m. Quit my job and just lived in his basement for the rest of the season. And it was the first time I got fired. So from there, I was off and running.
There you go. I remember because you called me and we were working it was actually a G League camp. We were helping just work some stuff.
Oh yeah.
You're like, hey, Bat just called me. I'm on my way to Ohio. I'm going to go work at Miami, Ohio. I'm like, all right, cool.
No more roommate.
Yeah. Right. I totally forgot that was how quick it was, but now you say that, I remember that.
Yeah.
So you go Miami, you get fired. You guys, Bat doesn't get, I guess, let go or whatever the term you want to call it is. And then what's next for you?
Yep. So then I moved back to Ashland, Ohio and lived with a couple buddies for a couple months. And then Chuck Martin got the head coaching job. He had just recently was at Notre Dame as the offensive coordinator, got that Miami, Ohio head job. Yeah. And he hired me back on defense as a graduate assistant. I was there for a year and then got a job at Wittenberg University, a D3 school. Him and the head coach were good friends. And that legendary coach, Joe Fencham, probably being the College Football Hall of Fame or close to it.
Yeah.
I think he averaged 9 wins for like 28 years in a row or something like that. Was there for a year coaching receivers and then went to Ashland University, coached receivers for a year. Then the next year, I coached DBs at Ashland University in 2017. And then realized that I need to expand my people I know. So I took a job at Wyoming as a quality control, whatever you want to call it, kind of working with tight ends and fullbacks just to meet people. And I met Coach Brent Vegan there as the offensive coordinator. I was there for a season and then got a job at Mississippi State under Joe Moorhead as an analyst role working with running backs. Then he gets fired. So second time fired. So I'm kind of hanging out, trying to figure out what I want to do. And he gets the offensive coordinator job at Oregon. So then I end up going with him to Eugene. I'm there kind of during that COVID year and all that. We did play. And as soon as the season was over, Brent Vegan got an opportunity to be the head coach here at Montana State and called me up. And I was thinking the phone call, he's going to call me and ask me for a position job. And he says, well, would you be interested in being the offensive coordinator? And obviously I said yes, and didn't really know what I was saying yes to necessarily, but I trusted him and I knew it was a good school and have been obviously the first year we go to the national championship. So set the expectations high, but I love it here. Bozeman's amazing. Our football is very, very important here. We pack the house every home game and we're going to keep trying to build this thing. Yeah.
So backtracking. So you coached, let's see, running backs, receivers, obviously quarterbacks, and DBs. Did I miss a position there?
Tight ends. Yeah.
Tight ends. So 5 different positions, right?
Correct.
How do you think, because did you even play defense in high school?
I played a little corner early in my career until everybody caught up. But no, just quarterback.
So what do you think like that experience taught you for the 1 year you worked on the defense side of the ball?
Yeah, I think it's, I almost think anymore. I think old school coaches and old school staffs back in the day, they used to take their offensive coaches and put them on defense for a year and put their defensive coaches on offense. And it teaches you the whole game, and you see it from a different perspective.
Sure.
And I think great offensive coordinators understand defense. You know, you look at a guy like Lane Kiffin throughout the years. His dad was one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time, and how he does things. You learn the ins and outs. You learn the rules of the defense, and you also learn that we make things complicated on offense sometimes, and stay aggressive. You know, because I think coaching DBs specifically is, if you're going to throw the ball downfield, it's going to make me more and more nervous to play man coverage, you know. And
sure.
Guys, I tell our guys, DBs play DB for a reason, because they couldn't catch. Everybody wants to be the stud scoring touchdowns at receiver, but you get moved to corner at some point in your life.
Sure.
So I think just understanding defense, you know, every defensive call, they're trying to call that defense to stop everything on offense. On offense, typically you're calling something for a specific defense, you know, and understanding how people game plan on defense. You know, working for Tim Rose was probably the best thing ever for me, just his organization, but how he saw defense. You know, I think ultimately in a game, you can figure out who the aggressor is. Is it the defense or the offense? And I always want to be the aggressor. I don't want the defense to dictate what I'm doing. And sometimes I can be stubborn about that, but that's my style and philosophy. And it just, you know, how hard it is on defense, you know, from the 11 guys playing together, running to the ball, using, if offenses use sideline to sideline and vertical threats, defense takes a lot of work, you know, and I think if you can keep things simple on offense and play fast, I always felt like on defense when I was over there, the offenses that weren't allowed you to get set and allowed you just to pin your ears back and go get them, it was easy. You know, the offenses that kept you guessing and weren't exactly sure what you were going to do, and you had little wrinkles here and there every week. If anything, you're making them communicate and be on their heels slightly before the snap of the ball. And that's what you're trying to do, because they're reacting. And if you can make their reaction slower by confusing them, then you're going to have an advantage.
Sure. What do you think? Who do you think's been the guys you've worked with has taught you the most coaching wise, and what?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I've been around a lot of good coaches. I had 5 offensive coordinators in college. You know, Matt LaFleur was the first one. 5, yeah. Yeah, all the same offense. You know, Matt LaFleur, then Joey Lynch, who's at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Matt LaFleur, head coach of the Packers. For people who
and then Mike Bath, who's now the offensive coordinator at Indiana State, but has been a lot of different places. Jeff Castle, who's now in the NFL, was recently the offensive coordinator at Indiana State. Yep. And then Tom Stacy, who was the quarterback coach for Charlie Fry at Akron all those years. So the nice thing is the offense didn't change, but I learned a little bit from each of those, you know. And then I go work for Chuck Martin, and I'd say as a young coach, that was the best thing for me working for him, because of the recruiting piece and how he evaluated tape and the details in that, and how you look for elite traits and then you try to build something. If you're not at one of these blue bloods, you're always trying to, you got to coach something, you know, and a lot of times you can't coach athleticism, or if you got an athletic quarterback, you got to teach them how to play quarterback. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so trying to find those little advantages in recruiting over people, because we're all fighting for the same people. You know, but on the other end, Joe Finch, in my first job, I'd never been to a football practice harder in my life, and I still have not, than Wittenberg University in the first day of August camp. And I learned how hard you can actually push kids in college, and I think that was huge for me. I remember being at that first practice, like, is this what it's like the whole camp? These kids ain't going to make it. And it was like that the whole camp, and they made it, you know, and I'll never forget that feeling. And I think that's our job as coaches, is to push kids, you know what I mean? And that's the difference. I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to make them the best version of themselves. And a lot of times coaches struggle with that. You know, they struggle with having a relationship off the field, but being able to push kids on the field. And I probably learned that from Joe Finch more than anything. And then obviously working for Lee Owens at Ashton, who I played for, just the ability, like we talked about before, to run a room, you know, and be able to connect people and get them to believe in who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And then Craig Bolt, obviously, is legendary, and his commitment to the toughness of the game, it isn't changing at every position. You know, they don't take anybody recruiting wise that isn't tough. You turn on their film from high school, whether it's a linebacker, a quarterback, or something, you never question their toughness. You know, And I think that's the biggest thing I learned from him on that. And then Joe Moorhead, who obviously our offensive system mirrors, and his ability to show up every day to the office and have a great time. We're still coaching a game, and it's a game of football that all of us have played since we were very little. And no matter what happens the day before, you start over the next day. And I think that energy, that's what people, it's a stressful game at times. There's a lot of pressures on coaches, but that energy in the building is what helps you get through it. You know what I mean? Kind of starting from scratch the next day and having a positive attitude. And your kids see that more than anything. And then obviously Coach Cristobal, just his commitment from a time standpoint to doing whatever it takes and having a process for everything, you know. And I think that's one big thing that here later in my career is, no matter what you're doing, whether it's football, practice, recruiting, in the office, camps, have a process. Stick to that process, refine that process. Don't worry about the outcome. And I'm sure he had learned that along his ways working for Nick Saban and even himself playing at the U back in the day. But the process of everything, just that keeps you focused and doesn't discourage you if you look too far ahead or too far backwards. You know, keeps you in the moment, just worrying about your job. And I felt like Coach Cristobal, for a guy like him to be an offensive guy and bring in a guy like Joe Moorhead and let him truly run the offense, that took a lot of trust. And I think you got to be able to trust your coaches and let them do their thing. Otherwise, they lose that creativity. They lose that feeling of, I'm making a difference on this staff, if you're just micromanaging, tell them to do everything. And obviously, Coach Vegan, you've never met a man, I don't care what anybody says, that's as patient as him. I mean, unbelievable amount of patience and unbelievable ability to think through every scenario. There's moments I get in the season, I'm just ready to burst, and he's just sitting there calm, and I want to make a decision. Let's go. And he's like, well, what about this? What about this? And he thinks through everything. He can take zero ego. He can take every single person's opinion in that building and make the best decision. And I think that's the thing that's unique about him. So a lot of my experiences have allowed me, because I try to take something a little bit from everybody, to be a better coach. Because I think coaching is not about having necessarily one style. It's about knowing what to do in different scenarios. And we're put in so many different scenarios on a daily basis, and there's no right. You don't know. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. You know what I mean? There's many ways to get to 4, and you got to take little things from each guy in that scenario, and hopefully you make the right decision.
Yeah. And you had, like, speaking of stuff like that, is like you as the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach specifically, like you had 4 guys play quarterback this year, like at meaningful times, or 3?
4. Yeah, 4. You know, and you know, we started with one guy, and then there was some other. I had probably a better quarterback room this year than most Division I schools, you know, and so it was tough. But when I got here, that room was a little bit divided. So it was trying to bring them all together for the right cause and help each other. And I felt like we did that. You know, we started one guy, he was our starter. Then we made a change the second round of the playoffs to a younger guy who we thought could do something that benefited our team with his ability to run. And then we had another guy in there that could have been that guy round 2 of the playoffs, but got hurt in the middle of the season. Big, long athlete. And then the national championship game, we played a guy who was a senior, one of the best kids I've ever been around. He had to go on and play his first game in 2 years in the national title game, you know, and did a decent job. But second
series of the game too, right? Like didn't know he was going to come in and play significantly, right? Because the starter got hurt or something, right?
Yep, got hurt, play 3. I think the biggest thing is, as an offensive coordinator, I learned is you can't always do what you want to do because I think it's cool or it worked for somebody else. You got to do what your players can do. And you got to always remind yourself on Monday, what can our quarterback do? What can our O-line do? And the skill positions around them, you fit that in, you know, but those are the 2 main things for me is what can that O-line and that quarterback, what is their skill set, and then build the offense around it.
I was going to ask this, but this kind of is probably what you just said, is like, what's your philosophy as a coordinator? You've never been a head coach, but this is your first coordinator job, first time calling plays, like philosophy wise, but you kind of just said that, what can my QB do? What can my O-line do? And have the skill guys fit that? Is that kind of how you?
Yeah. And I think today's college football game, as any parent or any teacher or anybody that understands 18 to 22-year-olds, it's very hard to get 11 of them to do the right thing for a long 10-play drive, right? So let's set things up, but I want to take shots. I want to lead the league and lead the country in explosives, and I want to lead the country in less negative plays. And that's kind of how we look at it, right? If I'm going to call bad calls, okay, just get back to line of scrimmage. Great quarterbacks, great offenses. When it's a bad call or the defense is running, you just don't make it worse. You know what I mean? And we run plays, and we got to be able to run the ball. Everything starts there. Your play action off of it, everything. No good team has ever won at all just throwing the ball all around the field. You got to establish the line of scrimmage, but more importantly, you got to find ways to throw the ball downfield and attack the defense, because that's how you open everything up. And I believe you should work sideline to sideline and work north and south in every game plan and do what you do. I don't want to go into that game and our guys have busts or MAs. We're closer to high school football than we are NFL from a knowledge standpoint. So let's keep it simple. Let's get good at what we do and essentially do what we do well versus what they do poorly, and that's how you have to game plan it. And if you're slowing your college kids' feet up with their mind, then you're doing a wrong job, and I'm just trying to gain numbers. Ultimately it's algebra on a football field in some aspect in my mind. I'm trying to get 3 guys on 2 or get my best athlete against their worst athlete, get them in space.
Sure. All right. That's great stuff. One last thing I always like to ask people when they come on here too. One guy that you've never worked with that you'd want to work with in the future, and why?
That's a good one. I think Lincoln Riley would be interesting, just to see how he runs his offense. He's a guy that every year he's game planning, he's finding ways to get his guys wide open, and they're very creative, and I think he's probably got a mindset of, why can't we do this? Which I like. I hate when coaches say, well, you can't do that. Well, why? Because that's what everybody said in the past. Well, let's try it. Let's be creative. Let's push the envelope. And I think he is that. So I'd love to be around him and see his temperament, how he teaches, and his philosophy on offense a little more outside of just the X's and O's. I think you could watch the tape and see some of that stuff, but what he's looking at. And I think the other one that's obvious in my age range, I'll be 33 here in 3 days, is Lane Kiffin. I grew up watching him, and, I know he's had some off the field things, but he's scored points every single place he's ever been. It hasn't even been a question. And how does he do that? How does he game plan? What is he thinking about what is he looking at during the game? And I think those 2 guys would be very intriguing to be around and hear the football aspect of it.
Yeah. One last thing. All right. So you coordinated for the first time this year, you're calling plays. If you could go back and talk to yourself in August of last year, what would you have done differently going into this past season?
Never waver from your game plan, in some aspects early. You have a game plan, be fully committed. There was a couple of games there where I felt like in the first half, I wavered from it, commit to it. And then at halftime, make adjustments. I felt like we didn't do a great job at halftime making adjustments. And I think you have to be logical. So if I had to tell myself, I'd say, okay, hey, you stick to your game plan the first half, and show your guys confidence. In that second half at halftime, be productive and change things and have a reason why. Why is this not working? You know what I'm saying? And when the defense, great coaches, I think guys are really good at game planning and come out of the gate strong and score points. I think great coaches can adjust at halftime, and that's where I need to get better. Is seeing what the defense is doing versus what I thought I saw on film, and changing a little bit within our offense.
Awesome. That's good. Now you can do that this upcoming year, and you guys can go win the Natty.
That's right.
All right, tell you, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you.